If you enjoy this video, please remember to like and subscribe, and if you would like to support the channel on Patreon or PayPal, the links are listed below. In the 1960s, people generated quite an interest in the spy detective genre after the premiere of television shows like Danger Man and the first James Bond movie, Dr. No, in 1962. Independent TV production company ITC, a creation of Lou Grade, would produce stylish, somewhat sophisticated spy detective shows, which generally focused on secret undercover British organisations sending their team on various missions. The main characters in most British spy shows, like The Avengers and The Saint, were usually suave and sophisticated, and were the epitome of good taste, like John Steed, who usually wore only the best suits, donning a bowler hat and an umbrella, and international playboys like Simon Templar, who usually drove a sports car, looking cool and stylish, enjoying the high life. These spy detective theme shows were a great escape for TV audiences from their mediocre lives. ITC would produce only the best of British TV, with short-lived shows like Man in a Suitcase, Randall and Hopkirk, Deceased, Department S, and its spin-off, Jason King, the last successful entry in the cycle of great British TV shows, was ambitious and the most expensive of the ITC lineup. Titled The Persuaders, it was an action comedy series starring Tony Curtis and Roger Moore, broadcast on ITV and ABC in 1971. Originally the title was going to be The Friendly Persuaders, but because that sounded too close to the 1956 movie Friendly Persuasion, it was shortened to The Persuaders. The Persuaders was about two wealthy playboys who are complete opposites from very different backgrounds. The very English lord, Brett Sinclair, educated at Harrow and Oxford, who is a former British Army officer and an ex-racing car driver. An American Danny Wilde, who grew up in the slums of New York City, who later became a millionaire through the oil business, are reluctantly paired together by Judge Fulton to investigate crimes that the police are unable to solve and right wrongs to protect the innocent. Sinclair would always address Danny as Daniel. The concept for the series originated from one of the final episodes of The Saint, titled The Ex-King of Diamonds, where we see Simon Templar partnered with a Texas oil man in a Monte Carlo gambling adventure. Film and TV producer Robert Baker and Lou Grade believed the premise for this episode would be perfect as a TV series, so they funded the new series. Roger Moore, after The Saint, also joined the production team as an uncredited producer, but he never signed a contract other than a handshake deal, which would not guarantee that he would be paid as producer.
Bob Baker, who's my partner in The Saint, thought it would be a good idea to do this thing, and it always works. Two men who are very different, they have the same objective, but they go about different ways, which is Spencer Tracy and Clark Gable in the old days. It works.
He said, Lou, I'll do anything you want, but no more television. I've spent 7 years on The Saint, and I don't want to do any more. And when Roger Moore says something, he means it. I said, Roger, I'm in trouble. I've committed a series of 22 episodes with Tony Curtis and you, a series called The Persuaders. He said, Lou, I'm not going to do any more television. I said, just a moment, Roger. Opened my drawer and I pulled out a substantial check. I said, Roger, this is something to start with. And without a flicker of an eyelid, he said, when do I start?
Roger Moore was the obvious choice to play Lord Sinclair. ITC needed an American co-star to ensure the series would be picked up by US television. Originally, Rock Hudson and Glenn Ford were approached, but they weren't interested. ITC then asked ABC for a list of suitable actors, which included 46-year-old Tony Curtis. Curtis would eventually agree and flew to the UK in April of 1970 to commence filming. The chemistry between Moore and Curtis on screen is undeniable.
Oh, we played it tongue-in-cheek, as I play most heroes tongue-in-cheek, because I really don't see myself as a hero, although I play them as though, it's all a joke. And I think you have to sort of make the audience feel that, hey, listen, it's all right to laugh.
According to Lou, in his memoirs, you and Tony didn't get on all that well. You didn't actually hit it off. Is that right?
Well, like all marriages, there are good days and there are bad days.
I can see another evasive answer coming up here.
Well, we had a bad day. No, we got off fine, but Tony would never stick to a script, and he always wore gloves, if you remember in the series.
Why?
Well, because he didn't want the hash that he was smoking to show on his fingers. Because
Reasonable.
he was very busy with.
Yeah.
And so he was always, a lot of the time, slightly stoned and couldn't get the words together. And he would usually sit and look at me and say, "Dear sweet Roger, I love you." And then he said, "We're just engaged."
Lou Grade noted in his autobiography, Still Dancing, that the two didn't hit it off all that well because of the different work ethics. But Curtis and Moore would consistently maintain that they had a great working relationship. Other people who worked on the series found Curtis to be somewhat temperamental on set, with one-time guest star Dame Joan Collins commenting on Tony Curtis's heavy marijuana use, which would last throughout the series run. Lawrence Naismith was cast as Judge Fulton. Naismith was a respected English actor who made numerous film and television appearances, appearing in Scrooge in 1970, the children's film The Amazing Mr. Blunden in 1972. His most memorable roles was as Captain Edward Smith of the Titanic in A Night to Remember in 1958, and Argus in Jason and the Argonauts in 1963. The Persuaders was shot in many great locations around France, Spain, Sweden, and Italy between May 1970 and June 1971, and at Pinewood Studios in Ivor Heath, Buckinghamshire. Each episode of the 24 episodes cost £100,000 to make. Moore quit smoking cigarettes but gained 20 pounds over the course of the series, which would attribute to the heavy use of real champagne during shooting.
There's also a story that when champagne was called for on the set, you and Tony actually drank champagne, not the usual fizzy water, and you put on 20 pounds in the course of making the series.
Yeah,
right.
if you look at the series, first episode, look at the last, I was about a stone or two different.
And that was champagne, was it?
It was a lot of hair.
Ah, yeah.
No,
yeah.
yes, it was always champagne, always champagne.
The Persuaders has one of the best title sequences, and with a funky main theme by John Barry. In the title sequence, it establishes the background and current identities of our main characters via split screen. Two dossiers, one red, one blue, labelled Danny Wilde and Brett Sinclair, which would simultaneously depict their lives. Moore could not find any good photos of him as a child. The black and white boyhood pictures of Brett Sinclair in the opening credits is actually photos of his son, Jeffrey Moore, but the younger images of Tony Curtis are real. The filming sequences of Danny Wilde and Brett Sinclair in the opening credits were made up of various early episodes, with them driving cool sports cars. The water skiing stunts are actually done by Roger Moore. The title also shows them together, enjoying a life of sport, drink, women and gambling. The titles were specifically designed so that neither actor would appear to have top billing, something both Moore and Curtis agreed on. Fashion played a big factor in the show, and Moore would act as his own wardrobe stylist. Every episode carried the closing credit, Lord Sinclair's clothes, designed by Roger Moore, with Roger Moore's signature. Some episodes would rely on Danny Wilde being mistaken for other people, usually by some bizarre coincidence. In Element of Risk, he is mistaken for a criminal mastermind named Lomax. In Anyone Can Play, he is mistaken at a Brighton casino for a Russian spy paymaster. Throughout the series, Danny Wilde is almost always seen wearing gloves, a gimmick developed by Curtis to make his character unusual. Moore and Curtis had their own signature cars in the series. Danny Wilde drives a red left-hand drive Ferrari Dino 246 GT, while Brett Sinclair drives a UK registered Bahama yellow right-hand drive 6-cylinder Aston Martin DBS. Both cars were provided to the show's producers, courtesy of the respective vehicle manufacturers. The Persuaders used many of the resources of Moore's previous show, The Saint. These included locations and the idea of reusing many of the visible vehicles from episode to episode. There were many famous guest stars, most notably Joan Collins. Roger Moore's James Bond co-stars Bernard Lee, Jeffrey Keane, and Lewis Maxwell would also appear. The Persuaders became very successful, but not in Britain. It actually received its highest ratings in Australia and Spain, Germany and France. With the show's success, Blue Grade was prepared to finance a second series by recasting with Noel Harrison, son of Rex Harrison, as a replacement for Moore. The producers convinced Grade that the dynamic that Moore and Curtis had worked out was unique, and it was better to leave the series as it stood. Blue Grade wanted the series to do well in the US television market, but the Persuaders made little impact in America, airing on ABC on Saturday nights, opposite Mission Impossible. Curtis attributed the lack of success in the US to the ABC network failing to screen it at prime time. ITC would repackage the series and re-release The Persuaders in the American market by editing 8 of the episodes together and releasing them as 4 90-minute TV movies, comprised of 2 episodes from the series. The Persuaders was a truly unique series, representing the best in British TV, which at this time was at its peak. Roger Moore and Tony Curtis's chemistry really makes this series work, adding to the show's fun-natured quality. The main theme by John Barry is also a standout, capturing that cool 70s vibe. My name's Jonathan. Thanks for watching.